and offer a range of technical and operational support. Now the question is, who makes up the Interpol? Well, the General Secretariat coordinates day-to-day activities to fight a range of crimes. Run by the Secretary General, it is staffed by both police and civilians and comprises a headquarter in Singapore and several satellite offices in different regions. The General Assembly is the governing body and it brings all countries together once a year to take some major decisions. Now these decisions are on policy, resources and finances of the organization that needs to be managed. The General Secretariat provides a range of expertise and services to member countries. Interpol manages 19 police databases with information of crimes and criminals ranging from names and fingerprints to stolen passports, which is accessible in real time to countries. Now, India will be hosting the 90th Interpol General Assembly in the national capital from 18th to 21st of October.
Out of turn one that India will be hosting. Now, India, of course, has been given a chance to host this event as we are celebrating the 76th year of our independence. The key focus of this event is going to be several issues that relate to security. One of them, of course, is going to be cybercrime, financial crimes and also child pornography that is peddled on the internet.
The agenda for this meet will be on the future of policing today's crimes like anti-corruption, cybercrime, crimes against children and others. Not just this, Executive Committee elections will also be held this time. Some of the successful operation that the CBI carried out with the Interpol is Operation Meghdut, Operation Chakra and Operation Garud. India has also been one of the relatively more active members and all eyes will be on the key decisions that will be made during this meeting. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
Hello and welcome. You're watching a special broadcast with me, Shavan Sen, as India is all set to host Interpol's General Assembly this month. Ladies and gentlemen, criminality has become a global phenomenon in the modern age. The dangers of international crime have to be faced squarely by all the nations, and this is where Interpol comes into the picture. Interpol is the world's largest international police organization which helps to collate, share data of criminals spread all over the world. India will be hosting the 90th Interpol General Assembly starting from 18th to the 21st of October. And as the National Central Bureau for Interpol in India, Central Bureau of Investigation coordinates closely with the law enforcement agencies across 195 member countries of Interpol. CBI, along with the Narcotics Control Bureau, recently participated actively in Interpol Global Operation Lionfish, involving international seizure of illicit narcotics. Now, however, having said that, there are a lot of misconceptions about the Interpol and how does it really work. There is a popular culture attached to the Interpol, and many perhaps assume that there is a fast investigation is only going to take place because we are a member of the Interpol. Now, to understand this entire functioning of Interpol, the significance of India holding the General Assembly in the national capital, joining us, three fine gentlemen joining us on this broadcast. Let me introduce you. For the first time on Indian television, we have the former CBI director, Mr. Rishi Shukla, an IPS officer of the 1983 batch. He served as the DGP Madhya Pradesh and retired as the Director Central Bureau of Investigation in 2021. In fact, it is 2-year stint as the CBI director, so the agency tackling and also getting breakthrough in many key areas. 37 long career years, Rishi Shukla has served as the SP of several districts in Madhya Pradesh. He's also been awarded the President's Police Medals for Distinguished and Meritorious Service. Joining us in the Delhi studio is Mr. Anil Sinha. He served as the CBI Director from 2014 to 2016. He's a 1979 batch IPS officer of the Bihar cadre, and he's also served in many posts in vigilance in both New Delhi and in Bihar. Also joining us from London is Dr. R.K. Raghavan. He's joined the Indian Police Service in 1963, served as the DGP of Police in Tamil Nadu. His tenure at the CBI was from 1999 to April 2001. He's also a recipient of the Indian Police Medal for the Meritorious Service and President's Medal for Distinguished Service. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on this special broadcast. Let me straight away start this conversation with Mr. Shukla. because it was during his tenure when India was chosen to host the General Assembly of Interpol in 2022. And in fact, he's played a pivotal role in ensuring that India hosts the General Assembly. So thank you very much, Mr. Shukla. Let me straight away begin by asking you the significance of India hosting the General Assembly.
Thank you, Sean. I recall it was the middle of 2019 when the Secretary General of the Interpol was to visit India. The Honorable Prime Minister at that moment of time suggested that 2022 is the 75th year of Indian independence, and that should be an occasion where we should be able to showcase it to the world at large how Indian law enforcement has progressed and how it has come over a period of time. That is how this idea originated. Mandated with this direction, we broke into a dialogue with the Secretary General, with the other agencies, and it appeared that the Great Britain had already put in a informal sort of a communication that they would like to host the 2022 General Assembly. However, we managed to convince them that this being the 75th year of our independence, it would be in the fitness of things that we host this event, and that is how we were able to propose in the General Assembly at Santiago in 2019 that we host this event, and it was unanimously accepted. Interpol, as you just mentioned, is a police organization. It is not an agency which investigates or makes arrests. It's a multilateral cooperation and coordination organization with 195 members. Members probably, if not more, then at least as much as that of the United Nations. It also predates most of the multilateral organizations. Law enforcement, criminal law is a matter of national jurisdiction. Criminal law, justice, it's all on national boundaries. However, criminals are going without any boundaries. They commit crimes all over the world. And without cooperation, without active exchange of information and quick information, we would not be able to work effectively. And that is where the Interpol comes in. It not only is a multilateral organization, but a General Assembly like this would allow a lot of bilateral understandings, a lot of bilateral, let us say, behind the scene meetings, which would also introduce the people to each other who would be able to communicate with each other in case of a need which comes for multilateral and bilateral. In both the cases, this General Assembly is going to be a big boost to Indian law enforcement as well as to the Indian image of having come a long way in the last 75 years.
Well, in fact, let me also now bring it, Mr. Anil Sinha, taking from where Mr. Shukla has left. Talking about the brass tacks, Mr. Sinha, the agenda of the General Assembly, and over the last few months what we have seen, India's contribution also, and the fact that be it in cybercrime, financial crimes, child sex offences among others, do you really believe that India sees Interpol as a collaborative, a constructive collaborator in law enforcement?
Absolutely. First and foremost, India has been having a very effective engagement with Interpol in the past and also now. Recently, you might have noticed that CBI has conducted searches with regards to the crime in the cyberspace, and they have collaborated with various agencies, including Interpol and international agencies like FBI and others. In fact, today itself, the news said that 105 locations were searched. And CBI has been pursuing excellence. They have a very well established system of procedures to follow the mandate, that is to ensure rule of law. Now, as a law enforcement agency, CBI has been having a wonderful engagement with the Interpol, but at the same time, it must be understood and seen from the contextual references. And the contextual references that, number one, India has been able to build over a period of recent times an ecosystem which is conducive for the economic growth, and that economic growth has resulted in our coming to the level of ascendancy under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, that we have come to the stage where we are the 5th largest economy now. So India's growth trajectory is not missed by anyone. And secondly, the context is that 2015, Interpol, the World Bank and the CBI had held under their joint aegis a conference. That conference was the Global Focal Point Conference on Asset Recovery, assets which are stashed away, which are taken away as dirty money, and they are stashed away, and for the recovery of that. And during the course of that, the Honorable Prime Minister had given a vision. In fact, he had spoken about it, and he had said that dirty money is something which drives away good money. It is also a form of transnational crime which funds terrorism. So there is an initiative which India, CBI and Interpol has been jointly taking against organized crime, particularly the one which has been funding terrorism and illicit trade which has been flourishing. So that kind of initiative has been there with the CBI, and CBI has been pursuing its mandate very well. And in that context, I would think that the General Assembly, which is basically a conference of the supreme governing body of the 195 nations, as my friend Mr. Rishi Shukla had said, during that period, a lot of discussions are going to take place, and a fruitful engagement would be there between India and Interpol. And as again said by Mr. Shukla, there would be bilaterals, there will be multilaterals, and both in that situation, I see that the future of policing would be discussed. There would be a whole lot of things like how to ensure safety and security of people, and in various areas, from human trafficking to drugs peddling to narcotics to illicit trade, which incidentally amounts to almost, as per the data of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, to almost 2 trillion parallel economy. So that again would be one area which should be discussed. And India has been facing threats, as you know, from both sides, from the Golden Crescent and from the Golden Triangle. So we need to ensure that our people are safe, our people are secure, because we have now have a good ecosystem. We have been having effective measures that have been taken against terrorism, and we are moving ahead. Our growth trajectory cannot be missed. So in that context, I see this.
In fact, what I'll do right now is get into more specifics in terms of cases and how exactly has Interpol been of help to India. Let me bring in Dr. Raghavan also. Dr. Raghavan, what I really find interesting during your tenure, as you've headed the Interpol in India at a time when the CBI was also handling some of those sensational cases, starting from Bofors scandal, then the cricket match fixing scam. Now, what I want to understand from you, how critical was it in terms of international cooperation in cases like Bofors, where the CBI team had basically sent a team to Malaysia for the extradition of Kutrochi, and also let's not forget about the IC-81 hijacking. So in terms of these cases where at that point in time, during your tenure, things would have seemed to be far more difficult than what it is in terms of cooperation.
Yes, Arun. Thank you very much for inviting me for this discussion. First of all, I must laud the Government of India and then the CBI for having managed to get the Interpol agreed to a General Assembly session in India, perhaps for the first time. There's a signal achievement which is going to enhance not only the Interpol but our own law establishments. I'm happy that Interpol is going to meet the General Assembly comprising nearly 195 nations. So that will give a boost to international cooperation with Indian police, Indian law enforcement agencies, and the rest of the world. Yes, I'm happy that you referred to the past, specifically 3 cases in which I was able to get the Interpol help us with the concerned nations. The first was IC-814, the flight that was hijacked to Kandahar, the flight from Kathmandu to Delhi. That was a significant happening, which we investigated. And the FBI, for the first time, came into the picture. They invoked their jurisdiction because at least 2 or 3 passengers were of American nationals. So it required a certain sleight of hand to get the intervention of the FBI, again, through the good officers of the Interpol. So that definitely helped us to go forward with a complicated international investigation. The second, and of course, the famous match fixing, which transcended beyond the borders of India, with the identification of Ansi Cronje, the South African captain, who was involved in a network of bettors who were staking the money on Indian cricket. And then, of course, Bofors. I need not expatiate on Bofors because the facts are very clear. It had very many international ramifications, and we had to work closely with Switzerland to get the crucial records. And subsequently, after the case was charge sheeted under my leadership, then we had the fleeing of Kotorochi to Malaysia. That also, in that aspect also, we were able to get first the Switzerland's cooperation, then the Malaysian government's cooperation. So all this would not have been possible without our seeking the assistance of the Interpol. Here, I would like to pass. Of course, my 2 other colleagues have already mentioned this. For the benefit of the average listener or average person who is watching this program, Interpol is not a full-fledged police agency. It doesn't have police powers. A lot of misconception that once you go to Interpol will swing its arm and then do investigation. Interpol, I think this is the right time to explain to the Indian audience that Interpol is not a full-fledged police organization. It's a kind of a clearinghouse of information. When a country issues the so-called red corner notice, that is, needs a person against whom a warrant is pending in our country, then the red corner notice, we seek a red corner notice from the Interpol. And the Interpol sends a notice to various countries to tell them that if this particular individual who is mentioned in the red corner notice is found in their countries, they should immediately inform India. So sometimes, of course, our illustrious neighbor, Pakistan, has been handing over Dawood Ibrahim. They say that there is no such person by the name of Dawood Ibrahim. So if a person changes his name and then evades the red corner notice, it becomes a big problem. So these are the ways in which the Interpol is able to help us. Once we tell them, then they relay the information to all the member countries. And of course, till some people, I myself called it a paper tiger years ago, because it cannot go beyond issuing the red corner notice. It can only exchange information. So I am hoping that one of these days, this lacuna will be filled, and then the nations will come together and give certain kind of authority to Interpol so that all investigations are quickly wound up, quickly concluded.
Well, I think so. All of you would agree that this is an area that needs a lot more discussion. So let me bring it Rishi Shukla on this very point. Mr. Shukla, during your tenure, we've seen several of the high-profile cases which required international cooperation. Can I then ask you, was there a moment where you really felt that the challenges are insurmountable, the fact that it's difficult to get real-time information, or would you say that things have become far more better in terms of extracting information from Interpol and Interpol member nations? Or would you say that there is a lot more work that needs to be done? What is it, in your opinion, that needs to be done at this point in time?
Okay, so let us first be clear that Interpol basically has a lot of information available in its databases. It runs 19 databases and there are billions of records. So there is some information which is readily available. We can get that information from the Interpol provided we reciprocate with that information. That is one very strong point of the Interpol. However, once we have been able to locate a person in a particular country, then it becomes a bilateral issue. We have been able to, let us say, have a red corner notice against a high-profile economic offender like Nirav Modi. Now, Nirav Modi was picked up by the UK police and he still continues to be in prison. But the process of extradition of Nirav Modi is a judicial process and the Interpol have no role in that. Interpol role ends when we are able to exchange the information. Then it is for the law enforcement in India to get into an agreement with the law enforcement in that particular nation and get further action. The international investigation is again a huge area. We have mutual legal assistance treaties. We have a system in the criminal law by which we can ask for judicial requests and we get back the answers, investigations from the police forces. But the key point of Interpol is its immense database. I mean, if we want, we should be able to, if we are able to say that who's boarding a flight, let us say from Seattle to Shanghai, that information would be available to us in a moment's notice. So it's a huge amount of information and that is the strength. So probably that is where in the forthcoming General Assembly, a lot more discussions are likely to be held. And I'm sure that given the absolutely technological change which has happened, a lot of information happening in other countries would be easily available to the law enforcement here. And then we would be able to take up the evidence and go and get the necessary legal support from the other country and get our fugitives back in India.
Mr. Raghavan, if I can ask you specifics in terms of the need of the hour. While we know that there is a limited mandate that the Interpol has in terms of exchange of information, it's more like a repository of information. But things have been changing. It's been evolving, and perhaps we also need to change with times. You've been very critical of the Interpol. Your columns where you've essentially made a mention, and I recall one such column where, especially where you've had very strong views on the Interpol when it comes to cooperation for nabbing dreaded global terrorists like Dawood Ibrahim. How do you think Interpol can be better used, especially when it comes to national security concerns? And what do you think specifically needs to be done? Go beyond just issuing notices.
Yes, you raised a very pertinent question. Nothing can happen. Nothing will change unless the political leadership of the various countries is agreed that, yes, Interpol needs to be clothed with greater powers, it should be taken more seriously, and it should go beyond sharing of information. As Mr. Shukla said, it has got tremendous, it's got a very huge database which will help us in a jiffy. If we want to get to know somebody with background, yes, Interpol will be able to help us. But then you can issue a red card or notice, which brings to world attention the misdeeds of any particular individual against whom a case has been registered in a country A, and whose courts have also issued a non-bailable warrant. Yes, thus far so good. But beyond that, it's very difficult to conceive of a situation, of a time when countries will come together and then invest in the Interpol more authority than it does now. This is a highly academic rhetoric issue, and I don't see any resolution of this major problem in the immediate future. So bilateral, as Shukla said, bilateral cooperation takes over once the Interpol is finished its role of giving information and then issuing a red card notice. And beyond that, the one great advantage where we have derived from Interpol is its information system, the computer system, which is phenomenal, which has kept in pace with technological advances all over the world. And we have also drawn heavily on the prowess of the Interpol in terms of technology. So things will have to change drastically if Interpol has to be taken seriously. Countries like Pakistan can ignore. There is no sanction if the Interpol issues a red corner notice. A country, another country in which a person wanted resides is then located, that country can ask you to go to hell. It can refuse to implement the red corner notice with impunity. There is no legal sanction against that country which defies the and does not cooperate with information, does not carry the information supplied to it beyond a certain limit. It refuses to take cognizance and refuses to hand over a person. It's mainly handing over of individual accused who flee this country and then go to another country and which is hostile to India. Then the country which is hostile can ask us to go to hell. That's the main lacuna. I don't know how we can resolve it unless there is a political will among various countries.
2021, the Indian economy was all geared up.
We are headed for greatness as a nation. We will be a superpower. If there's something that I want to see in our lifetime, it is to have our best living years as a citizen of a superpower.
Now there's a new goal, Mission Superpower. Witness the India growth story. Republic Media Network brings you India's biggest economic summit.
Making India stand clear on oil purchase, Union Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister Hardeep Singh Puri said that India has not been told by anyone to stop buying oil from Russia. The remarks were made by the Union Minister in Washington after his bilateral meeting with the US Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm.
India will buy oil from wherever it has to for the simple reason that this kind of a discussion cannot be taken to the consuming population of India. I mean, just imagine what has happened, the kind of dislocation and chaos you have in some countries. I don't want to list any, but let's say in India's vicinity.
Earlier, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on several platforms made it clear that India will continue to purchase Russian oil amid the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
Steady amid recession. Steady amid inflation. Goal is global dominance. Witness the India growth story. Republic Media Network brings you India's biggest economic summit.
90th anniversary celebrations at the Chandigarh Air Force Station with a parade and different drills and formations by the men in blue. The celebrations will be followed by a massive air show of nearly 80 military aircraft and helicopters at the Sukna Lake complex. This is the first time that the Indian Air Force has decided to hold its
Well, in fact, also, Mr. Sinha, if I can bring you in right now, there is one more aspect, as I understand, that too much of focus is only about the red corner notices, the yellow corner notices, etc. But the fact of the matter, there are other areas of concern also. You make a mention of the global asset recovery. As I understand, the FATF and the Interpol, they're coming together in terms of intensifying the global asset recovery. I want you to also touch upon the fact that do you think that there is an area of opportunity for the Interpol to perhaps also look at certain areas which were untouched for years together, especially if you're talking about global asset recovery? What does this mean, and do you really feel that there's a way forward?
Well, you're absolutely right, Sean. Basically, what happens is that all this is intertwined. Intertwined in the sense that, as Mr. Raghavan has said, and as Rishi Shukla Sahab has also said earlier, is that much depends on the cooperation which is available through various nations. See, 195 nations are members of this International Criminal Police Organization. The Interpol provides a platform, it provides databases, it provides tools, it provides sharing of knowledge, information, everything. But ultimately what happens is that when you want some concrete action, then in that case, the cooperation has to be forthcoming from the other side also. The other side being the other member nation where the fugitive might be hiding or stashing away his dirty money. You referred to that 6th Global Focal Point Conference, and I can tell you that Honorable Prime Minister, when he was speaking, he talked about it, that Interpol should work out a mechanism, it should work out a system by which such action is taken against dirty money that it becomes very difficult for people to take away money, plunder a nation's wealth and stash it somewhere else. Because such kind of organized crime that goes into illicit trade, which goes into money laundering, ultimately where does it end up all? It ends up only in funding the terrorist activities and in funding activities which are crimes against humanity. So in such cases, we need to take concerted action with the cooperation of one and all. Point here is that the databases are there, and we now have transformational technology. With this kind of transformational technology which is available to one and all, there is a growing need. That need is that in the uses of the data analytics and in sharing of the information on a real-time basis, there should be a cooperation without any riders. That kind of cooperation should not be subject to only the sweet will of any member nation, but unfortunately that is easier said than done. It will again depend upon the climate. Most of the democratic countries, they say that they would love to exchange information, but our experience has been that Interpol does provide a medium, it does provide a platform, but ultimately it boils down to the bilateral relations and treaties between the two countries and what kind of diplomatic climate, what kind of international relations the member countries are having, because it amounts to cooperation between one country to another country. It is international, so which means one nation to another nation. Interpol is only providing you the linkage in law enforcement.
Can I just take one more question from Mr. Shukla also, that in terms of the functioning of Interpol, and today with the General Assembly being held here in the national capital, do you think India today is in a position to perhaps at least make certain suggestions to the General Assembly of what needs to be done in a constructive manner, so that at least there is some power that is given to the Interpol? They are in a position to perhaps take better decisions, or decisions which is going to have some sort of an impact on ground in terms of policing?
Sean, the recent past, there have been some big steps taken. It's after several years that we have now a member from the Indian law enforcement elected to the Interpol governing executive committee. The special director of CBI, Sri Praveen Sinha, is an elected member of this elite council, which makes significant change in what the Interpol looks at things in a manner. Secondly, the last few years there have been some sort of a consensus amongst member states that crimes like child sexual abuse, crimes like human trafficking, and crimes like drug trafficking need to be looked at in a global manner, irrespective of where is it happening and what are the political leanings of the member nations. So that has been there has been a beginning in that the Interpol, along with a few member countries, they have begun what is known as a joint action. A joint action is when, let us say, the CBI takes action in India, the FBI takes action in the US, the Australian police takes action in Australia. So the international members of all of them get raided or acted upon simultaneously. So this is a beginning, and it is at least a beginning that in such crimes, which are crimes against humanity and the vulnerable factions, there is a consensus which is happening. In October 2020, in fact, the FBI, in its own release, had said that for the first time there was a parallel action between the FBI and the CBI in cases of fraud against elders, which is happening in the US and India combined. Similarly, of late there have been, at least as Mr. Sinha also mentioned, 2 or 3 major operations which the CBI has carried out along with the same operation being done by other member states. So at least if there is a beginning, maybe who knows, some steps will be taken forward. I am optimistic that despite the difficulties which are there of the nation-state boundaries, pure police, law enforcement, professional exchange of information is what would be a very positive thing in the forthcoming General Assembly session in Delhi.
Mr. Sinha, a quick comment from you also. Are you as optimistic as Mr. Shukla is that perhaps we are in the right direction, something worthwhile would really emerge from the General Assembly?
Absolutely, I'm in complete agreement. Let me tell you, this kind of database sharing which is there, and with the kind of the climate which has built in now, which has come about, there's everything that we should be positive about. Let's say I can take a second and I'll expand on what Mr. Shukla was saying about exploitation and human trafficking. There is this database on the information system, that is the ICSA, about the child sexual exploitation and abuses, where there is the images and the videos which are part of the database, and that is made available to the investigative agencies, to the law enforcement agencies, and that is an important tool which comes very handy when we are investigating cases. Now, that was just one example, a very small example. Similarly, financial crimes, similarly, capacity building programs, like as I mentioned earlier, that CBI has a full-fledged training academy, and in the capacity building programs, they have been helping the member nations. CBI has been helping the member nations and reach their capacity as far as the investigation of crimes is concerned, as for both crime, special crime cases and corruption cases, financial crimes that are. So I would think that when the cooperation is forthcoming from the member states, and when the Interpol is meeting to discuss the future of the policing, they have to devote some time towards building an ecosystem which is people-centric and which is conducive for the growth of all the member nations. It's not that only particular member nations have to prosper and they only can have their environment secure for their people. The safety and security across the globe, across the geographical, geopolitical contours is very, very important. And there, I have reasons to be optimistic because this Interpol General Assembly is happening here in India during the Amrit Kal, and let's not forget that the 5 pledges which was announced by the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister. The first one is about developed India, and it is in this context that I had mentioned that I see this Interpol conference. And the 5th one, the duties, the primacy accorded to the duties. And it is for the international criminal police community to think about the duties which they have to perform in securing and ensuring safety of the people or the member nations.
One final comment that I would like to get in from is Dr. Raghavan. Dr. Raghavan, you're known for not mincing your words, and in fact, one will never forget the headline of one of your columns that Interpol can't get us Dawood. It almost became a viral. Given to you at this point in time, Dr. Raghavan, what is it that you would like to see in this General Assembly? Something very constructive. And what is it that you would like to send across in terms of a message?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm amused that I have presented all the time a very cynical image. Yes, I'm not all that cynical. I'm slightly optimistic also. This General Assembly session in Delhi could make a difference, and I'm hoping that the Prime Minister himself will address it sometime. I don't know. I'm just indulging in some guesswork. If a person of the eminence of a Prime Minister addresses and tells us what we in India want, just a chance that message will be carried by all the delegates back to their countries, and an international that will provide the basic infrastructure or the basis for building a consensus among at least the important nations in the world. Because without such an active role for the Interpol, it cannot it cannot be construed, or it can be used as more than an information exchange forum. So this is what irks me badly, and I'm hoping that this session in Delhi will be a landmark session where persons of the eminence of a Prime Minister, if they address, then there could be a rethinking on the part of many of the countries which refuse to go an extra mile to help member nations which are desperately in need of apprehending important criminals who have fled the countries of origin and are providing a wrong example to future criminals.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on this broadcast. Special thanks to Mr. Shukla, Mr. Sinha and Dr. Raghavan for sparing some time and shedding light on several myths as far as the functioning of Interpol is concerned. One would really be hoping that this session, this General Assembly being hosted by India, turns out to become a landmark one, and hoping that India really benefits from the international cooperation. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
2021, the Indian economy was all geared up.
We are headed for greatness as a nation. We will be a superpower. If there's something that I want to see in our lifetime, it is to have our best living years as a citizen of a superpower.
Now there's a new goal, Mission Superpower. Witness the India growth story. Republic Media Network brings you India's biggest economic summit.
Making India stand clear on oil purchase, Union Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister Hardeep Singh Puri said that India has not been told by anyone to stop buying oil from Russia. The remarks were made by the Union Minister in Washington after his bilateral meeting with the US Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm.
India will buy oil from wherever it has to, for the simple reason that this kind of a discussion cannot be taken to the consuming population of India. I mean, just imagine what has happened, the kind of dislocation and chaos you have in some countries. I don't want to list any, but let's say in India's vicinity.
Earlier, External Affairs Minister S. Shankar on several platforms made it clear that India will continue to purchase Russian oil amid the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
Steady amid recession. Steady amid inflation. Goal is global dominance. Witness the India growth story. Republic Media Network brings you India's biggest economic summit.
90th anniversary celebrations at the Chandigarh Air Force Station.
Ahead of the Interpol General Assembly, Interpol Secretary General Jürgen Stock has spoken for the first time on Indian television. With over 40 years of policing experience, Mr. Stock has played a pivotal role in establishing 3 global programs to guide all Interpol's policing activities, starting from counter-terrorism to cybercrime. Thank you very much, Mr. Stock, for speaking to Republic TV. Let me straight away dive in by asking you, Interpol is moving into the centenary next year. How much has Interpol achieved since its creation nearly 100 years ago?
So, where to begin? Interpol provides a unique global platform for law enforcement cooperation across our 195 member countries. Our 19 global databases put 126 million records at the fingertips of police around the world. These databases are searched more than 20 million times each day, which equates to around 250 searches per second. We have assisted our member countries locate and arrest tens of thousands of fugitives and helped identify thousands of child abuse victims. And importantly, since crimes evolve, we keep an eye on the future through research and development in international crime and trends. As we move into our centenary next year, I'm sure that we will continue to see even greater achievements with the support of our membership.
Well, a lot is spoken about the challenges faced by Interpol. Many a times there is perception about Interpol which perhaps may not be true. Many do not even understand the true functioning of Interpol. How does it really operate and what are the challenges? Hence, I'm asking you this question as to how do you essentially plan to tackle the challenges arising out of lack of diplomatic relations between its members?
Interpol enables police to work directly with their counterparts, even and especially between countries which do not have diplomatic relations, ensuring that Interpol's activities remain in line with our key principles of neutrality and independence is fundamental. And as Secretary General, these are elements I am committed to upholding, as without which international police cooperation could simply not continue. Every police officer in the world knows that in our line of work, you never know who holds the next piece of information you need to save the next life or prevent a terrorist attack. Similarly, any criminal cartel or terrorist network will exploit any gaps in police cooperation, so we cannot afford to have kind of black holes. It is precisely our effort in supporting international police cooperation, especially where diplomatic relations do not exist, which makes Interpol a vital part of global security.
Well, this brings me to the other question that there has always been an area of concern for the Interpol. Crime of terrorism is outside Interpol's constitutional scope. So how does one bridge the gap in order to improve the scope of functioning?
In fact, terrorism is one of our 3 main crime programs, the other 2 being cybercrime and organized and emerging crime. Terrorism encompasses a range of complex threats, so Interpol's focus remains on 3 key areas: identifying suspects, preventing terrorist travel, and tracing their finances. This is another reason why our neutrality is essential and why Interpol's role in combating terrorism is enshrined in numerous United Nations Security Council resolutions. Interpol was the first international organization to develop and implement a military-to-police information exchange model, putting information from conflict zones into the hands of law enforcement officers. We help countries share biometric data on foreign terrorist fighters and other terrorist suspects, as well as conduct checks against our facial recognition system and DNA and fingerprint databases. Our stolen and lost travel documents database helps countries identify individuals attempting to travel on a fake passport, for example. And in terms of terrorist financing, we work with a number of bodies such as the Financial Action Task Force, the Egmont Group, and financial intelligence units to help drive high-level policies and cooperation to counter terrorist financing.
With every passing day, nature of the crime across the globe is changing, sometimes very rapidly. What does future policing look like in the wake of new challenges?
Today, we are witnessing unprecedented complexity in our criminal threat landscape, added to which COVID-19 triggered unprecedented opportunistic and predatory criminal behavior. Cybercrime stands, without a doubt, as one of the most challenging and fastest growing criminal threats faced by the international community. The threat is severe, far-reaching, and by definition, borderless. There are gaps in law enforcement cyber capacity across regions. Investigating cybercrime requires specific skills and technology which many countries do not possess. Again, this is where Interpol provides assistance and equally as important, training. By increasing the capacity of our member countries to prevent, detect, investigate and disrupt cybercrimes, we can help protect communities.
Well, coming to Interpol's relation with India. In fact, India has been grappling with growing number of economic fugitives. How do you think Interpol can perhaps improve its working with India to help counter this?
Our cooperation with India is already extremely strong. What is important to remember, especially with fugitive investigations, is these individuals are actively trying to avoid arrest. This often means fugitives deliberately travel to countries which have no extradition treaty with India or use their illicit gains to hide. In fact, depriving criminals of their ill-gotten gains is a key area for action, especially as less than 1% of global illicit financial flows are intercepted and recovered, which of course inversely means that nearly 99% of stolen assets remain in criminal hands. The tracing, seizure and confiscation of criminal assets should be a priority for all countries, and Interpol stands ready to provide any and all assistance.
In fact, India has played an active role in Interpol. How do you see the contribution that India has made to Interpol, keeping in mind in the last few months we've seen several big operations that were carried out here in India with the help of Interpol?
India is one of our most active and engaged member countries. Through the Central Bureau of Investigation, we see extremely high levels of cooperation in combating all crime types. A recent example is the successful Operation Garuda, which resulted in the seizure of large amounts of drugs and a significant number of arrests. What is equally as important, these operations identify further links between organized crime groups, which will no doubt result in more arrests and seizures in the future. And I was delighted when earlier this year India became the 68th country to connect to our international child sexual exploitation database. This is another demonstration of India's strong commitment to global law enforcement cooperation and their efforts to protect the most vulnerable members of society. These are just two examples of the kind of leadership in law enforcement shown by India and why New Delhi is the ideal location to bring together police chiefs from around the world for our Interpol General Assembly.
2021, the Indian economy was all geared up.
We are headed for greatness as a nation. We will be a superpower. If there's something that I want to see in our lifetime, it is to have our best living years as a citizen of a superpower.
Now there's a new goal, Mission Superpower. Witness the India growth story. Republic Media Network brings you India's biggest economic summit.
Making India stand clear on oil purchase, Union Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister Hardeep Singh Puri said that India has not been told by anyone to stop buying oil from Russia. The remarks were made by the Union Minister in Washington after his bilateral meeting with the US Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm.
India will buy oil from wherever it has to for the simple reason that this kind of a discussion cannot be taken to the consuming population of India. I mean, just imagine what has happened, the kind of dislocation and chaos you have in some countries. I don't want to list any, but let's say in India's vicinity.
Earlier, External Affairs Minister S. Shankar on several platforms made it clear that India will continue to purchase Russian oil amid the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
Steady amid recession. Steady amid inflation. Goal is global dominance. Witness the India growth story. Republic Media Network brings you India's biggest economic summit.
90th anniversary celebrations at the Chandigarh Air Force Station with a parade and different drills and formations by the men in blue. The celebrations will be followed by a massive air show of nearly 80 military aircraft and helicopters at the Sukna Lake complex. This is the first time that the Indian Air Force has decided to hold its annual Air Force Day parade outside Delhi NCR. Air Chief Marshal Vivek Ram Chaudhary addressed the IF Day gathering at Chandigarh base, saying the Air Force has inherited the proud legacy curated by sheer hard work, perseverance and the vision of their predecessors.
Time to once again action our destiny. Focus on mission superpower. Witness the India growth story. Republic Media Network brings you India's biggest economic summit.
A day after the conversion tape controversy, posters criticizing AAP for anti-Hindu event have been put up in Gujarat. This comes after Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's
outermost backdrop now changing their positions to give a diamond in the sky.
बड़ी शान से चले, अभिमान से चले, अपनी तो बस यही पहचान है.
Lying in front of you, the Trishul formation. Lo and behold, you now have a Trishul in the sky.
The Indian economy was all geared up.
We are headed for greatness as a nation. We will be a superpower. If there's something that I want to see in our lifetime, it is to have our best living years as a citizen of a superpower.
Now there's a new goal, mission superpower. Witness the India growth story. Republic Media Network brings you India's biggest economic summit.
Making India stand clear on oil purchase, Union Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister Hardeep Singh Puri said that India has not been told by anyone to stop buying oil from Russia. The remarks were made by the Union Minister in Washington after his bilateral meeting with the US Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm.
India will buy oil from wherever it has to for the simple reason that this kind of a discussion cannot be taken to the consuming population of India. I mean, just imagine what has happened, the kind of dislocation and chaos you have in some countries, I don't want to list any, but let's say in India's vicinity.
Earlier, External Affairs Minister S. Shankar on several platforms made it clear that India will continue to purchase Russian oil amid the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
Steady amid recession. Steady amid inflation. Goal is global dominance. Witness the India growth story. Republic Media Network brings you India's biggest economic summit.
90th anniversary celebrations at the Chandigarh Air Force Station with a parade and different drills and formations by the men in blue.
Tourist bus had collided with the KSRTC bus while it was trying to overtake the bus at around 11:30 p.m. last night.
People gathered with the stones and lathis as well to carry out this kind of a violent act on the people who were taking part in these Navratri celebrations.
Gurugram Khonsi area where two individuals tried to attack police officials and tried to attack them with sticks and also tried to damage the PCR vehicle in which they came.
Viewers, big breaking news coming in from Maharashtra. Uddhav Thackeray faction is all set to hold a meeting on Sunday at 12 p.m. after Election Commission froze the bow and arrow party symbol. The Election Commission's order is only interim though and is applicable to buy polls. Big news coming in. As the duel for the real Shiv Sena continues, Election Commission passed an interim order today, just a short while back, viewers. As per the order in the upcoming Andheri East by-polls, neither of the two groups shall be permitted to use a symbol bow and arrow reserved for Shiv Sena. This is what we're learning so far, viewers. Remember, the tussle over the poll symbol started after Uddhav Thackeray group decided to field Rutu Ja Latke, the widow of MLA Ramesh Latke. All right, I'm also being joined by Alisha, who will help us understand this story. Alisha, big development coming in from Maharashtra. We also know that some emergency meetings and will be taking place right now. Take us through the details, because tomorrow seems to be, we can expect hectic developments coming in from Maharashtra. Alisha.
Well, Shivangi, let me start with the Election Commission, that is interim order that has been given by Election Commission of India, clearly mentioning that whether it is Uddhav Thackeray faction or whether it is Eknath Shinde faction, neither can use the symbol, that is bow and arrow, for the upcoming by-election, that is an Andheri East. So we know that the Andheri East by-election that has been scheduled on 3rd of November, and looking into that where it was Eknath Shinde who put up a petition before the Election Commission, clearly mentioning that he has the majority, which is why bow and arrow symbol should be allotted to him. But later, that was Election Commission who asked Uddhav Thackeray to submit all the required documents, which is also the petition that has also been given by Uddhav Thackeray. But now this is a decision that has been taken by Election Commission of India. It is an interim order clearly asking both the group not to use bow and arrow, that is reserved for Shiv Sena for the upcoming Andheri East by-election.
Alisha, I'll be coming back to you. Alisha, I'll be coming back to you. We're joined by Vinayak Raut, MP Lok Sabha from the Uddhav faction. All right, Mr. Raut, how do you want to respond to this? Because we are also coming to know through our sources that Uddhav faction is likely to move the Supreme Court against the EC interim order. Is that true, Mr. Raut?
नहीं, अभी तक उसके बारे में कुछ निर्णय नहीं हुआ है। कल हमारे पक्ष प्रमुख उद्धव जी ठाकरे इसके ऊपर हमें आगे क्या करना है उसके बारे में हमें गाइड करेंगे, और उनके ऑर्डर के मुताबिक इलेक्शन कमीशन ने जो आज ऑर्डर की है उस ऑर्डर के हिसाब से नया सिंबल या नया नाम देना या सुप्रीम कोर्ट में उसको चैलेंज करना, इसके बारे में हम निर्णय करेंगे। लेकिन एक है कि आज जिस तरीके से गद्दार लोगों ने भारतीय जनता पार्टी के ऑर्डर से शिवसेना का नाम मिटाने का कोशिश की है, शिवसेना का सिंबल मिटाने की कोशिश की है, महाराष्ट्र की जनता उन्हें माफ करने वाली नहीं है। लेकिन हम शिवसेना कोई भी हालत में उद्धव जी ठाकरे जी के नेतृत्व में अंधेरी की बाई इलेक्शन चुनाव लड़ेंगे और जीतेंगे भी।
राइट।
हेलो।
अच्छा, कल मीटिंग बुलाया है, वी आर लर्निंग द उद्धव ठाकरे फैक्शन विल होल्ड अ मीटिंग टुमारो एट 12 PM ओवर द पार्टी साइन इन मातोश्री। क्या कल डिसाइड होगा? कल का मीटिंग जो होगा बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होगा, हमें कुछ बोलिए इसके बारे में कि आप कल डिस्कशन क्या होगा और कौन कौन से लीडर्स आ रहे हैं उस मीटिंग के लिए?
कल तो हम उद्धव जी ठाकरे साहब को मिलने के लिए जाएंगे, वहाँ क्या डिसाइड होगा तो मैं अभी इसके बारे में आपको नहीं बोलूंगा, आपको मंडे के बाद मालूम पड़ेगा शिवसेना ने क्या इसके ऊपर डिसीजन लिया है। ओके।
अच्छा, और एक और क्वेश्चन है कि आप जो मीटिंग होगा, आप बोल रहे हैं कल मीटिंग होगा, और कौन कौन से लीडर वहां पे आएंगे कल? जस्ट एक क्वेश्चन है, उसके बारे में बोलिए कि कौन कौन से लीडर्स एक्सपेक्टेड है उस मीटिंग में आने जो आएंगे। और एक और बात, why do you object to the what election commission has said? What is your objection to it?
अभी उसके बारे में मैं कुछ आपको नहीं बता सकता हूँ, लेकिन एकमात्र है कि शिंदे गट ने जिस तरह से बेईमानी करके भारतीय जनता पार्टी के जो अध्यक्ष थे ओपी नड्डा, जेपी नड्डा, तो उन्होंने जैसा कई महीनों पहले मुंबई में आकर बताया था कि शिवसेना का नाम हम मिटाएंगे, शिवसेना का सिंबल मिटाएंगे, ये सच करने का काम ये गद्दार गटों ने किया है। इसके लिए महाराष्ट्र की जनता शिवसेना का नाम मिटाने वाले को, शिवसेना का सिंबल मिटाने वाले को कभी माफ करने वाले नहीं। इसी तरह के इसके लिए हमें शिवसेना के जो ओरिजिनल हम कार्यकर्ता है वो जिन जान से मेहनत करेंगे, उद्धव जी ठाकरे जी का जो आदेश रहेंगे उसे हम काम करेंगे और महाराष्ट्र में फिर एक बार शिवसेना का नाम जहाँ जहाँ चुनाव हो रहे हैं या जहाँ कुछ प्रश्न हो वहाँ हम शिवसेना का नाम आगे करने का काम हम लोग करेंगे।
और विनायक राउत जी, बस एक और क्वेश्चन मैं पूछना चाहती हूँ कि इवन इफ दे से दैट आप बो एंड एरो सिंबल नहीं यूज कर सकते हैं जो अंधेरी ईस्ट बाइपोल्स है, do you still think that you can win? Because the big question is that do you have confidence that without using the bow and arrow symbol you can win these bipoles which are coming? Mr. Raut, just one last question.
We have confidence. Definitely we have confidence. जो भी सिंबल हम लोग लेंगे, जो सजेस्ट करेंगे उद्धव जी ठाकरे साहब और इलेक्शन कमीशन हमें जो भी सिंबल देगा वो लेकर हम चुनाव लड़ेंगे और जीतेंगे डेफिनेटली। Okay, bye.
Right. All right. Thank you, Vinayak Raut, MP Lok Sabha from the Uddhav faction, who has just joined us right now and has told us a couple of things. He said there'll be a meeting which will take place tomorrow where we will be getting some more details on Monday. He's not revealing much about it, but he's saying that there could be some action which could be taken later on. Alisha, you are joining us back. Alisha, Vinayak Raut is saying that they are not very clear about whether they will approach the Supreme Court, but it seems as if because the tweets which are coming, Alisha, even we are getting a tweet right now, it just came in from Aditya Thackeray where he's saying the people of Maharashtra will not tolerate this. So we can expect, Alisha, major movements tomorrow, isn't it?
Well, yes, Shivangi, right after the Election Commission of India has given its interim order, there is a meeting that has been called in, whether by Uddhav Thackeray faction and as well as from Eknath Shinde as well. What we know that Chief Minister Eknath Shinde, who was in tour, today he was in Nasik and later he went to Pune, but he has asked all his ministers and MLAs and also the senior Shiv Sena leader have asked to come back to Mumbai. And he has called in for an emergency meeting tomorrow at 7 p.m. That is at the Chief Minister's official residence, that is Varsha Bungalow. So there is a meeting that has been called in by Chief Minister Eknath Shinde over the same. Moreover, there is another meeting that has been called in by Uddhav Thackeray at 12 p.m. in Matoshri, where all the senior leaders, and moreover there will be a legal team which has also been asked to be present in the same meeting, because what we have been told by our sources that Uddhav Thackeray faction are likely to move Supreme Court over the Election Commission interim order to freeze the bow and arrow symbol for the upcoming by-election, Andheri East by-election. So this is where the decision will be taken tomorrow after the meeting that is going to take place at 12 p.m. And also has been said by Vinayak Rao that we are just waiting for Uddhav Thackeray to give the instructions and the decision that has been taken in the meeting. Right after that, we'll get to know what exactly the decision will be taken, because it's something now, a symbol that has to be chosen by both the group, whether it is Eknath Shinde or whether it is Uddhav Thackeray, because the Election Commission of India has made it very clear that by 10th of October, by around 1 p.m., both the group have to choose one of the symbol from that has been allotted by Election Commission of India. So it's very important to see whether it is Eknath Shinde or Uddhav Thackeray, what steps they will be taken. We know that right after the Election Commission has clearly given an interim order, clearly mentioning that neither of the group are going to use a bow and arrow, which is which represent Shiv Sena. They are not going to use that symbol in the by-election. This is an interim order, and this is where the Eknath Shinde has first put up a petition before the Election Commission of India looking into the Andheri East by-election. But tomorrow.
Right. Yes, Alisha, I'll be coming back to you. I'm being joined by Sandeep Deshpande, who is a senior leader from the MNS. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Deshpande. Aapka reaction kya hai? What is your reaction coming in? This is a very, very big development coming in from Maharashtra politics before the by-polls.
It is believed in the Hindu religion that whatever karmas you do, you get the result according to your karmas. And I think the karmas of Shiv Sena, what have been there for the last 2.5 years, and the way they have cheated people, they have cheated their own colleagues, they have cheated the people who have voted for them. So I think that karma has paid off, and that is why all these things are happening and yet to happen.
Yes, Mr. Deshpande. But, you know, right now the big setback is to both Eknath Shinde and the Uddhav faction right now. An entire war has been happening for the past few months right now. Who is the real Shiv Sena? What do you think will come out of this politically in the next few days?
No, it is now ultimately for people to decide that who has got legacy of Shiv Sena. And I think people will decide, and it has to be decided democratically. And people will definitely decide who is the real Shiv Sena. And that will be decided by people only.
So you're saying that depends on who wins these by-polls. Is that what you're saying? That will be the ultimate test of who is the real Shiv Sena, Mr. Deshpande.
Right. It will be in the court of people who are going to vote for them, and they will decide who is the real Shiv Sena.
Right. Because right now, even when the big news, viewers, and Mr. Deshpande, I'm coming to you as well. The bigger news, in fact, is that the Election Commission has said that they cannot use Shiv Sena and the party symbol of bow and arrow. Both cannot use the name Shiv Sena and the party symbol of bow and arrow in the upcoming Andheri East Assembly by-poll. Mr. Deshpande, just one last question to you. What do you think should happen? Do you think that these both the parties will now be taking the legal route? Because it seems as if this might happen. Our sources are telling us this, is that they might not give up that easily at this point of time. And do you really think that they will let it go that easily and let the public really decide at this point of time that who is the real Shiv Sena?
Of course, public will decide, but I will tell you one thing. These are the karmas of Shiv Sena, karmas of Uddhav Thackeray, karmas of Aditya Thackeray, who have betrayed the philosophy of Balasaheb Thackeray, and that is the result why they are facing this.
All right. Thank you, Sandeep Deshpande, MNS leader, for joining us. Mahesh Tapase, spokesperson NCP, also with us right now, because we are continuing our rolling coverage. Very big story coming from Maharashtra, viewers, and this will all be something we'll be tracking tomorrow. Mahesh Tapase, what is your reaction coming in at this point of time? Do you think that Uddhav faction will be going to taking a legal route right now? Because it's a very big thing that not being able to use Shiv Sena name and the party symbol. What do you think is going to happen next, Mahesh Tapase, according to you?
Yeah, good evening. I've read the entire order. It's an interim order pertaining only to the by-elections of Andheri East. It's not a permanent order. So hence the election symbol has been frozen for this particular election. So the party name has also been not, the warring factions within the Shiv Sena group are not supposed to use the party name only for this election purpose. In the time to come, again, Election Commission will reconstitute itself and take a proper call on where Shiv Sena, to whom the real Shiv Sena belongs to, and where the election symbol of the bow and arrow has to go. But for the time being, it is definitely that the candidate of both the parties, if at all Shinde's faction is putting up a candidate, which I don't think as of now they have announced anybody's name. But if at all they are putting up a candidate, they have to give the option of three symbols, out of which one will be allotted to the candidate.
But Mahesh Tapase, my question to you is, do you think this is a setback to the Uddhav faction especially?
Legal issues, and I think Uddhav Thackeray ji is not a weak leader to get set back by such legal issues. He has been running a party. His father has been running a party. The party is almost 50-60-year-old, and they have made deep penetration into the hinterlands of Maharashtra, not only in Mumbai, but also in the rural areas of Maharashtra. So people are shocked, people are amazed, and people see that all this is happening because BJP has engineered a split within the Shiv Sena.
All
so
right.
People are
Mahesh Tapase, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yes, we got your point. This is the interim order that is right, but it's also very crucial at this point of time. Gulab Rao Patil, Shinde faction senior leader, is with us right now. We have spoken to the Uddhav faction. What is your plan of action right now? And do you agree with what the Election Commission has said? गुलाब राव पाटिल, क्या आप मेरी